Hey, you're listening to the Tales of a Gearhead podcast. This is brought to you by Cornwell Tools. I'm your host, Stacey David. And Cornwell Tools are the choice of professionals, but not just professionals. Also, for everybody that wants to do any kind of quality work with quality tools, better check out Cornwell. All right, let's get to it. Hey everybody, today we have Joey Cudmore from Fireade with us. And we're going to talk about fire, we're going to talk about racing, we're going to talk about all kinds of cool stuff. Joey, good to have you on here.
Hey, it's glad to be here, man. Appreciate it.
Okay, so you were a racer for a while. Tell me about your racing career.
Yes, sir. I was 8 years old and I went to my first late model race at a local track from Maryland and fell in love with the sport. I was fortunate, to get out of high school, went to work for Tim Richmond, learned quite a bit.
Oh, you worked for him?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I was a tire changer and did the chassis setups and all for him right out of high school to finally being in the NASCAR ranks with Bobby and Davey Allison, Tim Richmond, Jeff Bodine. Worked for a lot of the big names.
Tim Richmond, man.
Yeah, Tim was a good guy.
What a talent.
He was ahead of his time for sure.
Yeah.
A lot of fun.
So you raced against Earnhart, all those guys, huh?
Yeah. Got some local sponsors. A guy named Dick Cheney had a big construction company back in...
Not the Dick Cheney. There's a different Dick Cheney.
There's a different Dick Cheney. He had a big construction company and gave me an opportunity, and we got a late model stock car and started racing at Old Dominion Speedway in Manassas, Virginia. My second year in the deal, I set the track record and won several races and was kind of the guy to beat out there. We raced against Earnhardt and Bobby Allison and Davey, all of them guys back in the day.
So who was the toughest driver you raced against?
Well, they're all tough. We all respected Dale. When he pulled up on your back bumper and tapped you, you knew you better get out of the way because he was going to go by you. I would say he was definitely an intimidator. And I grew up with, Ward Burton, Jeff Burton, Todd Bodine, and those guys were all about the same age. So we all grew up racing. The Dick Cheney guy wound up getting cancer and he died. And that was in 91 and the economy was kind of bad. And at the time I was winning races and setting track records and stuff. When his money went away, I didn't have the money. So I had to go back to working on them. And I turned wrenches and became a crew chief of CLR Racing. Yeah. We sat on poles at Daytona and Talladega in the ARCA series and run some cup races with a couple different drivers, Horner Day, Kevin LePage, and several other drivers in the CLR team.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
Yeah. But it takes a lot of money. That's why these...
Boy, isn't that the truth? Any kind of racing.
Yeah, any kind of racing. It doesn't matter what
Going fast is not cheap. And people have been trying to go fast for cheap for years, decades. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, you can't race with scared money. The guy that's worried about crashing his car, he's going to run a tenth slower than the guy that doesn't care and, out of control. And, you got to be out of control to go fast.
That's well put.
And I mean, when I say out of control, just have it loose and have it on the ragged edge to get them fast times.
So how long have you been with Fireade?
Well, how that came to be, I was on the pit row in the Daytona 500 in 2012. A guy named Juan Pablo hit a jet dryer that was blowing debris off the racetrack. And in the back of that pickup truck that was pulling that jet engine was a 200-gallon kerosene tank. Something broke on his car as he was going into the turn. This was under a caution, and something broke and he hit that truck. And when he did, it punctured a hole in that 200-gallon tank, and we had a big three-dimensional fire. The next day I called the owner of Fireade. I knew of his product, but I didn't know him, and I introduced myself to him the next day. Met him 2 weeks later for the first time. We met at NASCAR headquarters and we showed him that product. I went to work for him from 2012 until 2020, and that's when he gave me a bigger break, which was to give me my own company and opportunity to sell his product to all the motorsports and industrial customers.
Well, now Fireade, it is the fire suppression that is used in what, NASCAR? NHRA, run through me all the sanctioning bodies that you guys are affiliated with.
So like I said, we introduced it to NASCAR at first. 2 weeks later, I drove to Gainesville, Florida. Didn't know anybody in drag racing. Showed up at the Gator Nationals, and they said, yeah, sure, kid. Set up at the end of the track. We'll be down there in a few minutes. I went down there. They threw some product on the ground, which was alcohol, and I started feeling heat. So I turned my system on and put it out real quick, and immediately they switched to the product. And that's when I knew I had something. So I went to work for Mr. Thames full time. He gave me a truck and a trailer, and I went to series, and now we got NASCAR, NHRA, Monster Jam, World Outlaws, Lucas Oil, IMSA, IndyCar, got all the different series using the product.
Let's talk about this product a little bit, because I've used it a lot, and it is amazing. It's not water soluble, but almost. I mean, it's not the foams that we're used to. It's not the caustic chemicals. Let's talk about that a little bit. How does it work?
Well, it's all developed by a gentleman named Ron Thames. 35 years ago, he was an air traffic controller at Atlanta Airport. and they were talking about building runways and tunnels and what if fuel got down these tunnels. He overheard this and he went home and started reading books. He wasn't a chemist, he wasn't a scientist, so he literally self-taught him this technology, and now he's in over 7,000 fire departments. He sells international in 42 countries. I mean, pretty cool story of what this.
Oh yeah, it's amazing.
His ingredients are basically food grade type ingredients. So it's a water-based foam, where all the other foams that are on the market are man-made synthetics.
And those things tend to be caustic.
Yeah, they corrode and clog and do a lot of things to fire trucks. In order to put out a flammable liquid fire, you can't just use water. So it's important to have a foam. So during that course of getting all these motorsports teams, he also said, hey, why don't you stop into a few fire departments for me? And I did. And next thing I knew, I was the East Coast sales manager. So I went from Florida to Maine selling every fire department that I went to. I was able to get them to transfer from the product they were using to the Fireade product.
What other kind of products you got that's out that we need to know about?
Well, got a really good cleaner degreaser product that some guys out of Georgia developed.
Okay, now everybody has a cleaner degreaser. So what makes yours different?
Ours is water-based and environmentally friendly.
Okay, well that helps. So you're not going to die using it.
That's right. It's all water-based and EPA approved.
So the dog could drink it accidentally. It's not going to kill him?
Right.
Okay, well, that's good.
Yeah, but it really does. It works good. The race teams are degreasing their cars after the race, putting it in their floor scrubbing machines.
So you've got race teams using this stuff?
Oh, yeah. All the NASCAR teams around me in my area.
Wow.
Plus a bunch of people in drag racing and so forth, different forms. We sell it in quart bottles, gallon jugs, 5-gallon pails, and 55-gallon drums. Of course, most of the teams want to save the most money, so they buy it by the drums, and it gets the price right. Fireade just came out with a new product called Fire Bull. It's a fluorine-free product. It's a new product for 2021. We're real excited about our in-car systems that we've come out with a company called Spa Technique. We got them in a lot of dirt cars and even hot rods and stuff that
So this is a full in-car fire suppression system.
Yes, sir.
And for those of you guys that don't know, what an in-car does is if the car gets upside down or if there's some sort of problem, the thing catches on fire, you can either trigger it and it actually has nozzles that shoots this stuff all over you and all over the car to put out the fire. For those of you that have done any kind of racing, any kind of street racing, or any kind of like the Silver State Classic that require an onboard fire suppression system, this is what this kind of system is. Now, that sounds expensive. If a guy wants to put a fire suppression system in his street car, what does it cost? And what kind of hours does it take? How intrusive is it to the car?
So we have two different system sizes. One's a 5-pound system that comes with 2 spray nozzles. We've got a 10-pound system that comes with 4 spray nozzles. Comes with aluminum tubing that you would just bend with like a brake tubing bender to make your
so you could run it down a roll bar.
Then all our fittings and connections are stainless steel push lock fittings. So literally you cut your line to where it needs to be.
So it's like doing brake lines.
Yep. So literally, I mean, a system should easily be installed, hour and a half at the most, We have billet aluminum brackets where if you had a roll cage in it, they can mount nicely onto the roll cage in the bottle. Otherwise, we have the stainless steel straps that you just bolt it through the sheet metal or what have you.
So the bottle just goes, around the passenger compartment, or you just find a place, you put it in the trunk and put it wherever.
Yep, and then you can plumb it everywhere else. And we got a patented block that we designed that's got a fusible link block in it. So it's at 175 degrees. If you weren't by your car or if the driver was knocked out, it'll set the system off automatically, or he can actually manually pull it if he saw the fire before.
That's cool. That's cool.
So on a low-end system, you could probably get it in the $400 range, and a high-end system, maybe a little over $1,000.
Yeah, so this
really
is not
affordable.
Expensive.
Not when you think of the money that guys got tied up in cars nowadays. It's pretty cheap insurance. So
not to mention your life.
And it's all water-based, so there's no cleanup mess if you sprayed it off or if it went off by accident or something. Literally, it's water-based. You can let it evaporate or hose it down or wipe it off with a wet rag.
Fireade is amazing stuff. It really is. Just so you guys know, this system is so cool. We'll definitely be putting one of these on the show just to show how to do them, how to plumb them, when you would use them. Because a fire suppression system in any kind of a hot rod or any kind of a specialty car, kit car, anything like that is a smart thing to do. I know that, we've been telling people for years, to at least have a fire extinguisher in your car. But having been through several car fires and accidents and being at races where things have caught on fire extinguisher is not always easy to get to. Having an onboard fire suppression system is really something you may want to look at. So we'll go into it on the show. We'll show how to put them in and kind of show the benefits of it. I think it's a really cool deal, and I'm impressed with your fittings and stuff. It looks like you guys have really got some high-end stuff there.
We also, I've got a couple samples here in front of you that you're well aware of. We have it even in aerosol cans. So we have a 16-ounce aerosol and a 30-ounce aerosol can. We have holders and brackets that you can mount those in the cars as well. If you didn't want to go the high dollar full mounted deal, we've got other, people that should have them in their garages and their toolboxes and something beside the gas barbecue grill on the back decks.
Oh, yeah, because that always catches on fire.
Yeah.
Especially if I'm cooking.
Yeah.
Tell me about this new race series that you're with.
Yeah, Ray Abraham and Tony Stewart and a couple other guys.
Those are a couple of unknown guys.
Yeah. If you're a real racer, you know this. Ray's background was in the IROC series. He was a young little kid starting out in the IROC series and got that bug and so forth. And that's what led him to eventually come down to North Carolina and work for Rick Hendrick and Jeff Gordon. And we all know the success story that they had there. So a little dream of his was to create another IROC type series, and
which was a cool series. I mean, I always liked the IROC series.
Identical cars with different drivers from different backgrounds, IndyCar and all that, and it was really neat to see who had the most talent. Because in racing, you got your own ways of doing things and cheating a little bit better than the other guy, and so you don't know who the real driver is. It's whoever might be doing the best little tricks to their cars. Sometimes these cars are all built by Tony Uri Jr. and a guy named Jeff Foltz. They have a chassis company called Fury Race Cars,
and they're cool looking little cars. They kind of look like little super birds. Little wings on them and stuff. They're cool.
And that's Ray's vision. He didn't want any of these cars to look like a certain manufacturer, so he developed this car with a pen and paper and said, hey, I don't want it to look like anybody.
So the cars are Ray's brainchild?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And so what kind of motors are they running?
I know Ilmore's doing them.
Are they V8 cars?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. If I read it correctly, I think it said 396 cubic inch motors, about 700 horsepower.
What kind of tracks?
This first series, CBS has come on board to back this program and do all the live events. It'll be Saturday night racing.
Now, was this all left turn stuff?
They're going to do a variety of stuff. So they're going to be on a couple dirt tracks. They'll be at Eldora, which is a track that Tony Stewart owns, and they're going to run Knoxville. Then they're going to run a couple tracks up north. So there's 6 different tracks, and they'll all be a little bit different.
That's good. I think one of the smartest things that NASCAR has done is to start to do road courses and stuff and let these guys kind of branch out and see what kind of drivers they are.
Yeah, pretty neat deal. So there'll be a variety of drivers. There'll be 3 or 4 NASCAR drivers, and for this first season, it'll be Tony Stewart, Bill Elliott, Bobby Labonte, and Michael Waltrip. Those will be the NASCAR guys.
Okay.
Willie T. Ribbs is going to be one. They're bringing back some old guys that have been around that still got the bug and all that. Then they'll have Marco Andretti from IndyCar. I think Tony Kanine, Paul Tracy. And then what they're going to talk about doing is bringing 2 local hot shoes from whatever track and letting them get in these cars as well. So there'll be like 2 ringers that can be a part of the series too.
That will be really cool.
Yeah.
That'd be a great way to get new people involved in it. So can you sneak over there and steal one of those cars?
You come by, I get you a ride around the parking lot in one for sure.
I'm going to call Ray. Ray, I need one of those cars.
Yeah, he'd love to see you and come down anytime. It's right there in my backyard.
That would be cool.
When the subject of tools comes up in the shop, people will all talk about their sockets and their wrenches, but then we start to get into the subject of exotic tools. These are your body working tools, and these are your flangers and all these special tools. And people are like, where do you get those? Because you're not going to find those at Home Depot, and you're not going to find them at the local hardware store. And that is where Cornwell comes in. They have a catalog that's like the old phone books. You remember the phone books? Well, that's a Cornwell catalog. And these guys will bring the tools right to you. Once you start to get into that world, and once you start to see what's out there, you'll be like, what have I been doing messing around with the stuff that I find locally? One of the cool things about a company like Cornwell is that they do have warranties. They have guys right on the trucks that can really talk to you about the tools and steer you in the right direction. So if you're really into your projects and you're into doing things right with good tools, check out Cornwell.
All right, this next question comes from Glenn. Glenn's question was actually not just mailed in. I actually ran into Glenn at the local eating establishment this weekend. We started talking cars, and Glenn brought up a problem that he is having with his car that I hear all the time. He said, I've had my car at this shop for 2 years. How do I get it back? And he says, why does that happen? And unfortunately, that's a real common problem. So let me walk you through what's going on. How to stay on top of your project if it is now in what we call body shop purgatory, paint shop purgatory, whatever it might be. If you have your project down at somebody's shop and it is not being worked on in a timely manner, what do you do? Ideally, this is something that you should deal with before it gets this bad, but sometimes that's not that easy because a lot of these guys with these shops will take work that they are not prepared to do. And what I mean with that, when I was growing up, I had the opportunity to work with a guy named Jim Williamson, who was just a master mechanic and car builder and fabricator. I learned so much from him on what to do and how to think outside the box. And, you know, I owe a lot of my early knowledge and skill to Jim. However, I also learned from Jim what not to do. Because what Jim would do, what like a lot of people would do at the time and still do, is that if a person would come in and say, hey, Jim, I need you to work on my car, he'd say, yeah, just leave it here and I'll get to it in the next couple of days. Well, I was working for him and I looked over there and he's got 15 cars lined up. And I was like, Jim, why are you telling him you're going to get to that when you know full well you're not going to? And he would just laugh and he said, well, you know, I don't want them to take their work elsewhere. And of course, I was just a little junior high age kid at the time sweeping floors. And I'm like, well, if your work's good, they won't go somewhere else. And he looked at me and he's like, you little punk. But he's like, you know, you got a point. And I've never forgotten that because I've always approached it as like if the shop is doing good work, you don't have to worry about people taking the work elsewhere because people will want quality and craftsmanship every time over hack work. Okay, so there's that. Now, if you get into a shop and you're starting to find that the person's not keeping in touch with you, there's two reasons usually why that happens. Either the person is not spending the time on it they wanted to, and they don't know how to tell you that, because a lot of car people are not really good at communicating, or they're just kind of jacking you around, and they don't want to be confronted about that. The first one happens all the time, even to legit shops. Sometimes you get busy, you get involved in other projects or that kind of thing. But as a shop owner, it is kind of your job to keep in touch with the clients and say, hey, I didn't get a chance to do anything on your car this week or this month or whatever. It's just sitting. Here's the deal. That goes a long ways into keeping guys like Glenn from going, oh, what do I do now? And you have to keep it on a business level. And this is what's really difficult because a lot of times they're your friends. There's an old adage that you should never go into business with friends or family. That doesn't mean that friends and family are bad. It just means that most people approach friends and family in a less than business-like way. So instead of putting down a contract and staying with it, it's kind of like, it's just Johnny. I'll tell him. He'll understand. Well, when Johnny's waiting on his car, he doesn't understand. You know, when especially if you've done sort of barter and that kind of thing, those are always dangerous. I'll go into that later on. But anyway, so if you have your vehicle down at the shop, I strongly suggest that you work out some sort of thing with the shop, some sort of schedule where you talk every week, every 2 weeks, whatever it is, and you just update each other. Whether it's texting or whatever, just say, hey, just checking in, want to know what's going on. And they can say, hey, didn't get a chance to work on it, or hey, we got the floors welded in, or hey, we got the motor built, whatever. That way you can kind of keep a timeline going. And I've got a whole section in the project planning book about how to plan this out. But even if you have it planned out, you still have to kind of take this ball in your own court and take care of it. Because ideally the shop would do that, but the reality is most are not. You know, car guys, we get busy, we're creative, we're working on things, and it's always one of those, I'll call them later. So 90% of the time, it's not vindictive. And 90% of the time, you're not being taken advantage of. The person's just busy and maybe has overcommitted some time, wants to give you the good news instead of like, well, I didn't really get a chance to work on it. In Glenn's case, he's like, the car's been there 2 years. And he says, I'm just ready to get my car back. Okay, if it's gone that long, there comes a time where you just need to cut your losses, basically, and just go get the vehicle and just settle up with what's been done. And you can do that without being a jerk. You know if you've been taken advantage of. And there are times where you have to get angry at the person if the guy's taken advantage of you or has been ripping you off. Most guys aren't like that. It's just gotten away from them. A lot of times they may not have really understood the magnitude of the project. It may have been beyond their scope of ability, and they don't want to tell you. There's a lot of that kind of stuff. So they feel a little bad about it because they were a little dishonest. They said they'd paint the car and they really don't know how. That kind of stuff. So you got to give the guys some leeway, but you still need to get your car back. And the question that Glenn was asking, he goes, do I wait and let the guy finish it? What do I do? I said, the problem that you've got right now is the car's disassembled. You didn't disassemble it. So you don't know where the parts are. You don't know anything. So the best thing you can do is just go down there to your guy and say, hey, listen, I'm going to go a different route. You've done a great job so far. I just need to get everything together. And then you kind of walk through the car with the guy. In other words, if it's sitting there and there's no interior in it, you can go, okay, so now where's the interior here? Okay, so there's the seats and there's the console. Okay, what about the steering wheel? And he's going around finding the stuff. And if he doesn't know where it's at, if you say, hey, what about the dash? I don't see the dash. And he might be going, I don't know where that's at. Well, then you can write it down and go, okay, we need to find the dash. And you see how you kind of get things back on track? And you don't have to be a jerk about it, but it can get your project back on. And then once you get it back, either you do the work yourself. It's the whole reason Gears exists, is so you can do the work yourself. Or if you do need to take to somebody, now you can go in and go, okay, here's what I want. I want you to do the interior. That's going to be carpet, seats, dash, whatever it may be. And I want you to wire it. That's it. And anything more than that, we'll have to discuss. And then you can say, okay, I want to know how long it's going to take. Give me an estimate on how quickly you can do it and what worst case scenario is. And he'll probably give you a ballpark of a month or so. And then hold him to it. Keep calling them every week. Say, hey, just want to know if we're still on. And if we're not, how come? By holding them to task like that in a kind way, you'll be able to feel real quick if the guy's going to start yanking you. If you call back every week and he's like, man, just didn't quite get to it. And you drive by there and he's taking on other projects like Jim used to do, go get your stuff and go somewhere else. That guy's going to jack you for years. Not that Jim did that. Jim would finally finish the cars, but he had guys yelling at him all the time. And, Jim was a nice guy. And I was like, Jim, you're causing your own problem here. You're telling guys you'll get to it in 2 weeks, and in 2 weeks they're going to go, dude, what's up? He said, that's just the way that I was taught. So he had to have a little mindset different too. Anyway, Glenn, I hope that helps you and all you others that might be struggling with that. Remember, communication is key. If you have a shop, communicate with your clients. If you are a client, communicate with the shop owner, communicate with the builders, the fabricators. That's how you don't get lost on a project. Hope that helps.
All right, that's it for today. Once again, we're brought to you by Cornwell Tools. Have a great day and get out there and work on something.